my name is Tiffany Cooper from Studio TKuip, and today I'm going to be doing an image breakdown or a design breakdown of one of my latest projects, which is a passion project called the Honest Printing Company. And by the way, if you really like the shirt that I'm wearing, you're able to purchase it from Studio TKuip's Etsy store, and that will be linked below. The first thing I want to do is give you a bit of an introduction about how this idea came about. I came up with the idea when I had just worked at my first ever proper job, which was at a very dodgy printing place. And I learned a lot in that time, and I also saw many questionable designs. And I jokingly told my co-worker that I would like to create a printing company which solely roasts and toasts people's designs, and we both thought it was really funny. The name was created. I came up with the slogan, which is "The truth cuts deeper than a paper cut," which I thought was very amusing. This idea has been on my to-do list for a very long time, so I'm very pleased to say that it has been completed, and I'd love to take you through the process of how I got to the final outcome. This was the first original concept that I came up with. I liked the circle idea. This was called the Honest Printing, and I didn't know where to stick company in. My other idea was to perhaps do a bit of a boxy writing, such like this, the Honest Printing Company. I always knew that the word honest would have to be one word on a line. I didn't know anything else design-wise and what I was thinking, but I knew the word honest had to be the biggest out of everything. When it came to trying to find the font face, I am really pedantic about fonts. Like, I love fonts. It is my bread and butter. But I also want to make sure that I'm picking the right fonts. I did even contemplate using Comic Sans for the lols, as seen here, but it didn't fit with what I was thinking. So after going through many fonts, I decided to pick this font, which is the Aesthetic Nova. I don't know how to say it. And the reason why I chose this font is because I actually wanted to use this font for another client project, but it never happened. And so this one has always been in the back of my mind. To me, it's a bit more of a finessed or refined version of Cooper's Black, which is considered an ugly font. I had never played with the pen tool. If you don't know what the pen tool is, it's one of the best tools that you can use to customize fonts. You can draw random bitty bob shapes. It's really quite a wonderful tool when you know how to use it. And I had seen a lot of Instagram tutorials where people were using the pen tool to customize typefaces, and I thought this is something that I want to do. Now, I wrote out the word Honest Printing Company, but I knew that the word "the" printing and company needed to be a completely different font face, because to me, I was concerned that this font that I chose wouldn't be readable on a smaller scale, and it creates a bit of visual interest. So I decided to go with this, and I customized the H. So if you look at the original H, which is over here, you can see that I definitely played around with the position of how the H flowed. Now, I played around with it, kind of going a little bit of a wacky cabaret style. It felt very out of place, and I didn't really like it. I played around with this random blob thing. Again, didn't like it. And you'll also see on this wee bit of a dodgy one, I was also playing around with the idea of maybe slanting it, the writing, but I decided against it because it looked odd. And I also played around with all the words joining, and I just didn't like it. Something just felt very out of place. I knew that the Honest Printing Company was edgy, trendy, and savage. Looking at this just didn't hit the criteria that I personally was after. So after settling on the font, I played around with the idea of where that, like the "the" went, because I considered it putting maybe the "the" above the H. I played around with it all being lowercase. I played around with capital letters, and of course I played around with it being in a circle. I also played around with like this shine aspect. I played around with it being in a box. I played around with stretching the font. So there was many variations that I thought that it could go. I even played around with the idea of maybe using a blood drop, but it just didn't feel right. I wanted to play around with the color red. Red is one of my favorite colors, but because of the slogan, the truth cuts deeper than a paper cut, I was thinking of paper cuts and when you bleed. Now, I could have played around and just done red, black, and white, but I decided not to do white in that sense because I felt like it would be a bit too predictable. So I decided to use a pink because if you actually look back in history, the color pink was actually predominantly designed for men in mind because of war. It symbolized blood, and then probably in the 1950s the narrative flipped. The color pink was no longer a boy's color, it was a girl's color. So after kind of coming up with the logo, I felt very comfortable with that. I wanted to play around with a pattern. I'd seen people playing around with patterns on Instagram, and I really was curious how was I going to do it and what elements was I going to choose. So there are 6 elements that I chose to include. In this pattern breakdown, which I am going to post on my Instagram, I wanted to break down the reasons why certain elements were chosen. Whenever you work with clients, you need to explain and educate your client on why certain choices were made. You're not alluding to them being dumb, and I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying when you explain your reasoning why certain choices were made, they are more likely to give you the green light. So the letter H is the first element that I'm going to break down. And the letter H for me was really necessary to include into the pattern because it creates a subtle brand recognition. I've seen a lot of patterns online where people are creating these really, really cute designs and I love them, but there's no like tie or link back to that brand. So for me, putting in the letter H, because it's a logo element, made a lot of sense. The next one is of people. The Honest Printing Company are constantly roasting and toasting customers' designs. They are also a graphic design consultant, so either way they will be critiquing your work. The next one that I briefly mentioned is this. Now, the thing is, it's got a double meaning and it's really boils down to interpretation. Now, if I showed most people and said, hey, look at this design, they most likely would assume that it is an ink blot or something to do with ink, but it's actually blood. That's what I wanted, because tying back into the slogan, the truth cuts deeper than a paper cut, to me it made sense to include a drop of blood. The next logo that I had was a printer. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There needed to be a printer involved in the pattern. Scissors needed to be in the design of the printing because when it comes to printing, you need to have a thing called a bleed, and the best way to explain what a bleed is, it is an area to be trimmed off. And the double meaning for this scissors, but that this company will cut you down and cut you to pieces. And the last one is because of they're a print shop, they print documents, flyers, brochures, business cards. I know some people would probably comment, why didn't you put a hat and a tote bag and all this? There's already 6 designs. I don't want to make it look super busy. I didn't want to put 9 elements on because I didn't want to, and that's what it boils down to. So when creating this branding project, I wanted to create some deliverables or mock-ups. So I created a business card and I created social media posts. The easiest one to create out of the 2 was business cards, only because I have done a lot of business card jobs for clients. All I know is that when I created this business card design, I wanted to include a pattern because firstly, I just created a pattern, and number 2, I've never really done a project where I've been able to design a pattern and put it on other printed materials, so I knew I wanted to put it on a business card. The other really important thing that I like to include on my business cards, which I don't see a lot of designers doing, is listing the services that you provide. A lot of service-based businesses don't explicitly list what they do, because the argument that I have is that if I don't know what you do or what your business does, why would I contact you? The most challenging design to create for me personally were the social media templates. I went through many variations because I hadn't actually written down exactly what this business does. So if you're doing a passion project, do write down, come up with a very, rough description of what they do, because it will help you out. Hopefully that gives you a bit more of an idea of what it took. When it comes to this brand, I don't know how many Karen companies that there are, but I have accidentally created one. So I'm Tiffany from Studio TKuip. If you like to see more of these type of videos, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you like the shirt that I'm wearing, you can buy it from my Etsy store, which is linked below in the description. Thank you for watching. Bye!